Are we on?
All right. Welcome to another edition of. What are we now?
Lunch Zone.
Lunch Zone. We're
Are
back
we
to
going
lunch.
Back to being lunch
We are
zone.
back.
I
Back
kind
to
of
lunch
like Coffee Klatch better as a name.
I do too.
I don't have a preference.
Well,
Put
in
up
any
a vote
case,
on Facebook.
welcome to another edition
Yeah, I
of
like that.
Coffee Clutch / Lunch Zone / Serious Play / DH Lab here at UWM. My name is Chris Brzezicki, a graduate student here at UWM's English department.
And I am Thomas Malaby, a professor of anthropology here at UWM.
I'm Krista Lee Malone. I'm a lecturer here with the anthropology department at UWM.
PhD in anthropology.
Yes. Dr. Malone.
Dr. Malone. Exactly. I don't want that lost.
Oh, it's not.
And I am Lane Liebeszeller. I'm a PhD student here in the anthropology department at UWM.
So today we are kicking off a month of rogue games and roguelikes, dungeon crawlers, and this is coming from last week. We ended the day with a short, kind of discussion, like trying to define what a rogue or a roguelike was. So we're going back to the very beginning and starting with the original Rogue, not so coincidentally named Rogue. And so we're playing this. It's a public domain game. Came out around 1980. Originally developed by Michael Toy and Glenn Wickman out in California. So this was a game that was developed, as many games were back in that time, on mainframes, shared, distributed, and manipulated by anyone who could get their hands on it, which was kind of the key at the time. Access was scarce, and yeah.
So I have a question then.
Sure.
I mean, because this is like my prime PC gaming years.
Mhm.
You know, going down to the local computer store, and there was like the one rotating rack of floppy disks, the bigger ones, right? And you Sierra and all those old companies that very early on were distributing games to play, right?
Mhm.
But this isn't that, is what I hear you saying. I mean, it probably was ported to that at some point, but it started out much more as something that would circulate on a different economy, which would have been like university to university or company to company, those research centers. And that's something we haven't really talked much about, but that's kind of an interesting thing, is that somebody who knew Richard Bartle, whose stream we watched, a couple
Mhm.
months ago, in the 70s through the early 80s, would have been plugged into a whole kind of early proto-internet
Yeah.
set of connections to learn about certain games, and his game was for that kind of mainframe, the MUD one. Whereas so many people of my generation, it would have been older people than me back then
Mhm.
who were doing that. So I just thought I'd mention that. That's two totally different economies of both computer games
Yeah.
happening at the same time, and then you had the early consoles happening then too, and quite not.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, not to talk too much about my own shtick here, but this is what I'm looking at now with my dissertation, is this period of history where these what is so significant about these games isn't really the games themselves, but how they were made and distributed.
Yeah, right. Good.
It was that community that nurtured this, technology and we wouldn't have a lot of this now. And it comes from tabletop role playing. Not just thematically, but that sense of community and gathering. And this is how we get things like this.
And the people with the leisure, and the access to the kind of technology that made it possible for them to explore the ideas that they got from Tolkien and from D&D and elsewhere in the new computing environments that they could get access to, in the off hours and the mainframes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like a lot of these games, I think either Michael or Glenn had a parent who worked for a high-tech industry, like I think nuclear physics somewhere, and they were able to have that access. And like you had to sign up and you shared a console with other people, and on their off time, like a lot of the MIT with Space War, and Bartle and
Right.
Mud One and Colossal Cave Adventure. A lot of these were kind of pieced together in their spare time, lunch
Yep.
breaks and
Yep.
after hours, and we hear these stories about people riding home from school on their bikes and managing to eke out 15, 20 minutes here and there. But I don't remember when this was released commercially, but it was released commercially. I distinctly remember the kind of the box artwork, that kind of 80s style. But this is I'm gonna pick on Nathan since he's not here. He'll be a little late, but he kind of let out this groan when I mentioned, "Oh, we got to play the original Rogue," and he kind of went, "Oh," and maybe one of the reasons for that was this kind of crude ASCII-based artwork.
I love the ASCII typeface.
Yeah,
It really, I have a very old, warm and fuzzy feeling for that typeface because I stared at it so long. The first Star Trek game that was on our ASCII PC, the green monitor, that was the only color it gave you, and just used ASCII characters to represent the little Star Trek, your Enterprise and space and stuff, all this stuff.
I just think it looks cool. Like, I'm not quite old enough to have the nostalgic factor with it, right? Because I missed all of that, but it looks, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's from like the older movies that I saw. But
Like war games and stuff like that.
yes.
Yeah.
I think that's like, I don't know, this to me represents computers and computer culture and geek culture,
Yeah.
and I love this.
Yeah.
I would entirely agree with that, actually.
That's fascinating for me to hear because I'm 50 now, right? And it's kind of nice to think that the stuff that I thought was really, really cool could still also appeal to people of a generation who didn't live through it. That's a nice idea.
Oh god, yeah. I actually once it was a few years ago, but I put together a PowerPoint presentation to go with one of the ASU conferences. And it was all, well, if what I had done hadn't broken, it was all in this with the old green, and that's how it was supposed to come up. And then unfortunately, because they had a Mac set up, it wouldn't run on it, but that's neither here nor there. Had it worked, it would have looked like this.
Yeah, and with that green thing, I mean, you see it in things like Fallout 4, that shout out to the little green, monochromatic monitor and typeface.
Well, wasn't that also the basis for the first, oh my god, I can't remember the movie that had the slight green tint?
Not the Matrix.
Yes!
No, the Matrix.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right? That was the same idea there with that tint, right?
Yeah, and the falling characters. I bet they were ASCII characters, although I haven't really looked closely at it.
well, I mean, again, it goes back to that ideology of these early games where access was the ultimate ideal. I mean, anyone could participate in this community if
Right.
you had access to a console, and so the graphics were just as easily accessible and programmable. Unlike, I mean, Unity and our other game engines now are free, but we can only go so far before we have to start paying, and comparatively very little training. A lot of these guys were self-taught, so anyway, welcome, Nathan.
Thank you.
How you doing? We were just I was trying to describe your reaction when I mentioned Rogue last week.
Well, so I had envisioned this month as trying to incorporate sort of a theme or genre, and when I did that, what I had scheduled was several roguelikes, which are a somewhat more recent phenomenon, and I would say that in the ones that I was looking at, and I would say that it had started with Spelunky, mostly because Spelunky took elements of Rogue and NetHack, which are viewed as sort of the fundamentals of a roguelike, which is permadeath. When you die, you can't go back to the run that you were doing, and procedurally generated levels. And it took those elements and moved them from a RPG into a platforming genre. And by doing that, there seemed to be an explosion now of a lot more games that take a more action-oriented approach to roguelike features, and I had wanted to sort of trace that through. But when Chris said, well, we can play Rogue, we should play Rogue, I was like, I guess. It is an old game, you know. It was made in 1984, and I had not played Rogue before, but I had played NetHack, which is similar in the way that it's presented, which is ASCII art. But NetHack has a lot more elements to it, a lot more... And it's one of those games that has been in development for decades. You know, people keep adding to it, and that also has a community that does tile sets, so it can look fairly modern, even though the underlying architecture of it is similar to Rogue. But it's... Well, we'll start it, and we'll show you.
Well, I got a little hung up on the Rogue's name. Suggestions?
How about SP?
Manatee.
We gotta click on that again, I think.
We could do Manatee.
Oh.
That is-
You know, can I make a suggestion? Although I think that's really a great idea. A wonderful game scholar. He actually mostly writes on other stuff. Named Tim Burke, who we used to game with in World of Warcraft. He's at Swarthmore. He has a great blog called Easily Distracted, which is for academics. You'll really enjoy it. Great guy. Anyway, in World of Warcraft, he always played rogues, and he named his rogues as a historian of sub-Saharan Africa, after famous rogues from sub-Saharan history. So Rhodes was one of them, and Shepstone was another. But these are all really rich English people who basically stole from
Oh, okay.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
So we'll stick with Manatee, I think.
But I always thought that was fun.
Matey!
That's
That
it.
is a good one.
I did not know that's where those names came
Yes,
from.
yes, Rhodes and Shepstone, they were
Okay, so
rogues.
I want to point something out that I learned when I was setting this up.
love it.
F1 gives you a list of commands. Don't press escape. You will get kicked back to Internet Archive, even though it tells you to. So you want to press spacebar. So these are the list of commands which you're going to have to refer to.
Wow, there's so many.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, this is an older game that doesn't really care that it has
Supervisor key.
fake DOS. And then I think F4. Oh wait, no, F1, and then F2 is a list of. Oh, jeez. F2 is a list of symbols.
Oh,
Okay.
let's look at this for a second here.
Yeah.
Food. Mm-hmm. Wow, the Amulet of Yendor must be special.
It's an Ankh.
It's not a generic symbol, it's a specific.
Yeah.
It gets its own dedicated symbol.
Safe and perilous magic. All right.
All right.
So I don't know if this is a weird mix of like analog and computer games, but if I play a game like this and it has that kind of list of controls and symbols and whatnot, I will print them off and take them to the wall so
Yeah.
that I can play without having
Oh,
to
yeah.
keep going out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well-
so I'm not the only one. Yes.
Well, and this probably came with a README, and you could print that out. And and then there was also, although you may not want to, I don't know, you may not want to do it in a roguelike just because there's such a high possibility of you dying. That's Hobgoblin, beware.
How do you attack? Oh.
You just point to it.
You try to move into it, kind of.
Yeah. But you might also have a whole bunch of graph paper to graph the map.
Oh, I started doing that in Minecraft.
Oh, gosh, yeah. What's the B?
I got tired of getting
Bugbear?
lost, so.
So I have
It's a bat.
That was easy.
Yeah, you defeated the bat. I have not found a shop in the small runs that I've done. Uh-oh.
Oh,
A kestrel.
that would be like a hawk kind of
Okay.
falcon.
Easy.
An excellent hit.
I don't know what you're doing, but when I was playing earlier, like, I just kept missing, and it would say, like, you missed the bat, you missed the hobgoblin, and then it would occasionally say you did not hit it. Like, I don't know what the difference there is. Like, you totally whiffed it.
Hits 7. Is that your hit points?
Yes.
Ooh, you're down to 3. D was one of the potions. I.
Well, sorry. F1, you want to do Q,
Quit? No.
quaff a potion.
Oh, and then yeah.
But we don't know what these are. And this
Yeah.
is another thing with these games is like, and I've seen this in some newer ones where it'll be a potion, but its effects are randomly generated. So you don't know what it does.
You can't even like come to know that green is usually one thing
Right.
or another.
And
That sounds like a certain fountain that we recently ran into.
and if I don't know if you noticed, he had
Yes.
picked up a scroll at some point, and the writing on it was gibberish. It
Yeah.
was randomly generated because, again, you don't know the effects of it. You have to use it, and then if you find it again, then you would know what the effects are.
I vote for tangerine.
All right. You feel stronger. What
All
bulging
right.
muscles?
Okay.
But it didn't give you any more health.
No.
Strength went up.
Oh, do you want to try another one?
Oh.
A potion?
Oh, sure.
I mean, we could probably kill it. But defeat it.
Oh, you're confused.
And I don't think you're gonna hit it now.
Uh-oh. Down to 2.
Ah,
Much better.
yeah,
Got
there you go.
3 hit points back. I don't know if I say that that's
Ooh,
much.
yikes.
Well, from what I've noticed, the potions and the food are it's not an instantaneous like you get 5 points. Like it'll with each move you get some more points.
Oh, so you should drink one and then like walk around a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
What's the...
Yeah.
I don't remember my DOS commands at all.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow, you got to go up.
It's actually interesting because I've been watching
10
this
rogue. There you go.
Okay.
TV show
You mind if I
called Halt
by
and
all
Catch
means.
Fire,
I started that.
and it's like it's really cool to see
what's
what they're
the
talking
show?
about. Halt and Catch Fire.
Huh.
It's an AMC show that's now on Netflix. That's about like 1980s and kind of the beginning of computer creation. And
Huh.
this company that was fighting against IBM to make a new.
I think wasn't it Texas Instruments?
I don't know what it was
It was
actually.
Beckmore,
No, the wife works for
Louis-
Texas Instruments.
Oh, okay.
Halt and Catch Fire?
Halt and Catch
Yeah.
Fire.
Oh yeah, it's about TI, right? I saw a promo for that, right?
It's
Texas
not.
Oh, it's not about Texas Instruments.
That comes
One of the
up.
people-
Somebody works for Texas Instruments.
The wife of one
but-
of the main characters, who becomes main character, works for
okay.
Texas Instruments.
Okay.
You know,
So
I think
that's
it's
gonna have to
interesting.
wait till I
This.
finish the Great British Bake Off.
Oh my
Yeah, I've been
God.
watching that.
Everybody
All
is
of it.
watching.
Now we're watching the master classes. Yeah.
It must have been y'all that mentioned it, because somehow I came home and was like, oh, I gotta check out this show. And it's been
It
Yep.
was us.
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
D&DM's last time.
That's right. And it's a great show. I just want more seasons. It's almost impossible to find anything other than the 4 seasons that are on Netflix.
At the risk of getting off topic, I just have to say the British know cooking shows.
They sure do. I just love that there isn't the bombast of American
Yeah.
Thank
cooking
you.
shows,
Yep.
right? It has such a secure decorum to it, you know.
Uh-oh. A kestrel.
You can do it.
No, I can't. Oh, I did it. I did it. Yay.
Don't be defeatist.
Okay. Explored all this.
Wow,
There-
you got to go up the stairs, I guess.
Oh.
Emu?
Emu. What?
Hey.
An emu doesn't swing. It maybe lunges, I suppose, or something.
I was thinking there should be an option to pet it.
Right.
I don't
Oh,
think
I
it
don't
would
wanna
attack
drop
you right
one.
away. Just be
Yeah.
like, hey, an emu.
So, I don't know if this question will go anywhere, but having played a lot of these kinds of ASCII games when they were coming out, you know, in the 80s, I always felt like they really did provide a sense of place, strangely enough, you know, and I would get really invested in them, and I would see the Klingon cruiser appear in the corner of one of these, just like one of these little things, and I would be over here, and, you know, like, can I get away or can I get over? You know. So, what do we think of the ASCII kind of experience? I don't know how much of
Well-
this sort of stuff people have played before.
Yeah, I'm used to it, so I don't have an issue with it per se. And you get used to it, certainly. You know, I can see. Oh, I'm a guild novice. I can have as much of a place with this as something more recent, like Dungeons of Dreadmore, or which is very similar to this, but has graphics. You know, and all of those have to have some sort of suspension of disbelief because of the way that they're. You know, it's not like the roguelikes are going to generate a new dungeon that looks like The Witcher 3 or something. It's always going to have to be some sort of tile set or something somewhat similar. And I think you can get that with this.
Go up the
If-
staircase is left, carrot. Down is right.
Okay. Oh, frick. Well, I killed that. We could we could play it again, or should we try Spelunky, or should we keep going with?
No, we
No?
barely looked at that one.
All right.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay, fine. Jeez. All right.
They're about to go emu.
All right. Okay, so somebody else wanna try this?
Sure, I'll play.
Let's see here.
Oh, yeah.
We should have some theme music for when we do musical chairs.
Well, you could hum it.
What song would it be? I mean, you're the bard.
No, Pop
so-
Goes the Weasel. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
What's the song for musical chairs? Is it Pop Goes the
Yeah,
Weasel?
I think so.
Huh.
You have to hit space.
All right. The other thing is that, you know, that randomly generated text to give you the feedback about what's happening is both a response to the limited graphics, but it's also in keeping with the text-based genre.
Yeah.
And going back to tabletop, the idea that there's a DM describing to you what happened,
Right.
isn't that person wouldn't choose the same words all the time, you know?
Well, and to get back to that question, I think the sense of place for these games comes from the way these games were distributed. It wasn't so much the graphics, or there's not a whole lot of action, but the participating in what was then an emergent community.
That's a
Mhm.
that's a really good point.
Right.
It's something that's somewhat simulated with the fact that it's on Internet Archive,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the same thing where you would meet somebody, or you go on like a BBS or something, and people would be talking about Rogue, and there's a good chance that the developer would be on it, saying I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to do that. And this is before my time, but I know that in hobbyist stores, which is where you would find computer geeks a lot of the time, they might actually distribute this on like a 5-inch floppy disk, that somebody just put in a plastic bag, and you might get some more games on it or whatever. That's just the way that these things were distributed. So it was very much in keeping with that community.
Well, yeah, and it's funny you put it that way, Chris, too, because it immediately makes me think of Benedict Anderson and Imagined Communities, which is a landmark book about nationalism. And his argument is that one of the key ingredients of development of a sense of belonging in modern nation states is simply the because we're talking about communities that are so big that you would never come to know everyone face to face. So his argument, and it's the famous argument of the book, is that what he calls print capitalism has been key to that, which is the newspapers, essentially. Now, the argument goes that you have these national newspapers in early nation states, and those newspapers are read by everyone, right? But furthermore, as each person is reading them, they are aware that they are one of many people experiencing the same thing, often in the same moment. That everyone's walking outside their front door and collecting the morning paper and going in and having coffee and seeing the same layout of stories on each page. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So that when you talk about feeling like a sense of community, it's not just in the store. When you're by yourself doing this, you're also feeling like you're a part of something
Yep.
Is there
shared.
a difference? I'm always interested in how that intersects with the sort of
Ooh, I need
Flexi-
food or something.
flexibleness of games, because in this case it's not like a newspaper. You're not reading it in the same layout. So yeah, you ate some food, I think.
I did. Ooh. Okay, I am up being worn. All right. I have a bow.
Oh wait, no, you didn't eat any food. I think you need to press E to eat food,
Oh, so after I do this, I do that.
and then you select A. Yum, that tasted good.
Didn't give me any hit points.
But it should. Oh, I thought it'll slowly start accruing hit points, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I was at 5, so, but that was before I ate the food. Anyway, who knows?
So I think what you're experiencing is an ice monster is
That's
within a
relevant today.
game.
You are going up in hit points.
I am missing, however. Ooh, I got an excellent hit. Killed
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Yes.
So what I don't know. I had an hour of sleep last night, but what I think I'm trying to say is, in this case, you're not experiencing the exact same map as
Right.
everybody else, but you're experiencing the same set of rules as everybody else.
Not just the same set of rules. You're experiencing the same sets of contingencies.
Yeah.
In other words, you're experiencing the same, oh, I wonder what's going to happen now. I wonder how different it will be this time, right?
I wonder too, though. Like, so we were talking a little earlier about kind of the history of D&D and how that impacted these games, and like I read a book recently, the name of which is escaping me, but it was talking about the imagined communities that happened around literature, like Sherlock Holmes and that kind of thing, and the way that like the journals on Sherlock Holmes would print people's like names and addresses and their responses, and then there was this whole like mailing community across oceans that happened, and how that community started and how that impacted the way that these games were shared, and how that might have impacted the way that imagined communities formed around these games.
There's a wonderful connection there to the great, great work of the Afro-Atlantic historian Paul Gilroy. Is it Paul Gilroy? Yeah, I think it's Paul. A couple different books. The Black Atlantic is his most famous book, but There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack is another wonderful book. But I think of the Black Atlantic because in that text he argues about the importance of the circulation of cassette tapes and records across that area, that media, and then there was use of radio stations and reggae radio stations and things like that. It's an early and important work in globalization for that reason, because he knows or recognizes how these newer media forms that can be very easily transported as people are moving, that in a Benedict Anderson kind of way, they are key to the development of a sense of community.
Well, now that's interesting. Do you know when was that published?
Black Atlantic, someone can look it up, but I think it was probably in the very mid 80s, mid to late 80s.
Okay, well, that
Maybe
would
early 90s.
So there's, as far as like the distribution of music within those communities, there's quite a lot of different blogs. I don't know if they still exist anymore, but they were certainly very popular a number of years ago. One of them being called Awesome Tapes from Africa, where this guy had gone to Africa and just got tons and tons of cassette tapes from different stores there, and digitized them and started uploading them to his blog, and that was how they distributed it. Watch out! It's dark in here. I wonder if you have a torch.
It was 1993.
Oh, was it that late? Wow.
But then there was another compilation that had come out. Oh, so you can define the walls, but you can't
Right.
see in the same distance that you could before. There was a compilation that came out called "Songs from Saharan Cell Phones," and what these were, self-recorded songs that people passed along on their cell phones through, various small flash drives or whatever that they could, then load onto their cell phones and listen onto their cell phones within Saharan communities. And that is, the idea of like passing along music within tapes, within these cell phone distribution methods, anything that that distribution and that finding of community will happen within the allowability of that new technology.
Right, the affordances of it, exactly. There's so much great work on that came out within the last 20 years or so on globalization. Like there's this relationship between these wedding videos in Nigeria and in South Asian Indian, Bollywood film genres, because they were watching a lot of Bollywood films, and then they would create their own films. Or there's like Muslim communities in Finland that would circulate video cassettes in order of other people's weddings across their diaspora in order to identify potential marriage partners. Just really cool stuff like that. In fact, my first PhD student here, Stephanie Bjork, that was her dissertation, was on it. Included work on that.
Well, that gets to something that I very minorly touched on, but the idea of like bootlegs is completely different within, or it being a somewhat problematic distribution method is completely different in other societies. And in fact, it does build that community in terms of openly sharing these works and in fact changing them. I know there's I don't know if I saw it on Cracked or something, but there was they had talked about these bootleg games in certain parts of Africa that were basically like Grand Theft Auto mods. So it would be like, like Homer Simpson Grand Theft Auto. Like somebody replaced the model of the guy in Grand Theft Auto with Homer Simpson, and it was sold as a official. I don't know if anybody considered it official, but it was sold as like a Simpsons game. And you heard about when Harry Potter was very popular, like all these unauthorized sequels in China. And I think that's a different way of interacting with the text. I mean, we do it here with fan texts, but that was done with games too, a lot of the time, because press S when you're over there. Oh, see, there's a way to like search for secret passages. Search for trapped secret door.
Oh, right.
But
So since you brought up China, right?
Yeah.
And I worked in the industry in Taiwan. They have a they're culturally not that far from China.
right.
They have, I feel like, a different cultural take on like copyright
Yeah.
and the way from what we look at, right? So there were times even when I was working and I would look at my boss and I would even say like, isn't this going to get us sued? Because my American perspective was always like, no, you have to be original and everything you come up with yourself. And the response, the couple of times I asked that question, was just like, why would we reinvent the wheel? Like that's silly. The idea that you would try to come up with something totally original was seen as this like wasted effort. Like somebody else has already done this. We're just going to build on it and make it better. And then we're going to get farther, we're going to progress more, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every time we want to do something.
So that reminds me of, and I can't remember the NES game, but it was a NES game that was eventually distributed in America. But when it was over in Japan, it had like all of these, like the bosses were like Jason or the plant from Little Shop of Horrors, or like all these other intellectual property that when it came over here they had to change everything, all of that content, because it wouldn't fly within our laws. But when it was created in Japan, it was perfectly fine. And I know Lawrence Lessig talks about when he talks about it's
Code.
well, Code,
one
but
of
I was
them.
thinking when he talks about, what was that, the book that he released in open?
Oh yeah. I've assigned that one too.
Yeah, but at any rate, in that book, I can look it up. He uses Japan as an example of how they deal with, or don't deal with, violations of copyright law, where they may have these comics that use other people's properties, but people don't really care about it because it's a totally different idea behind it. And I think when these games were, to tie it back to this, when these games were being created, there was a lot more openness to sharing it than, and that's probably out of necessity too, because the distribution channels weren't as rigid as they are now.
Wow, he's published more than I thought. Are you talking about free culture? How big media?
Yes.
Yes, free culture. That's it. It's and there's some classic examples in there, and the one that's easiest for me to teach from is the English common law example that Britain for years has had a balanced. They've been able to remember a kind of the necessary public policy balance between things falling into public domain and the extension of individual copyright so as to incent individual creativity. And Larry's big thing is we've kind of forgotten that balance in the United States, all in the name of celebrating individual creativity at the expense of a recognition of the collective contributions made in any creative work. But that's a hard argument to make in the United States, especially these days.
But
with it being so stridently individualistic.
But you still see that now with mods and and Steam supporting them, although they tried to monetize it and that didn't go very well. But they have mods, they have the Steam community where people really extend the life of a game by adding to it, and people still play Doom because people have taken the open source code of it and just continued it almost indefinitely. And I think PC gaming would be very different without that ethos. this is early enough where that that doesn't even like. There's a copyright statement on there, and I'm sure they want to be acknowledged, but it well, yeah.
Well, we could spend the rest of the day talking about that, the history of open source and the tensions in the early, request for comment stage of the internet, and the creation of what was the email Richard Stallman's creation of the open source
Man, you were just
copyright.
like killing everything. Right?
Hey, see, you finally play a game of my era, and I'm like on here for the longest time. I'm just like rocking it. See, I killed it in 1984. That's the lesson of today.
All while engaging in some robust academic discourse.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is like your example of Super Meat Boy, except that really is.
Yeah, that was the wonderful Moses Wolfenstein, and yes, that is his real name, who was in the Games Learning and Society program at Madison.
I mean, Doom's a good example, though, because id Software was another one that benefited from being able to take Wolfenstein from an earlier developer.
That's true. Yeah.
Received, I can't remember the original creator's name, but they were able to carry on that through that title, and Wolfenstein, and then Doom, and produced Doom through a new shareware.
Shareware. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one of the
where you could play one level.
Oh,
and then
you're
if
hungry, by the way.
Oh,
if you liked that level, you could go ahead and pony up for the rest of the game.
oh yeah.
Well, and shareware. I mean, there was a couple. Well, you're not hungry anymore. There was a lot of different distribution methods, and shareware was one of them that has really fallen off the radar. Even you don't really even get demos that much anymore, which is really weird. But shareware, you got for Doom, you got like a third of the game, and then if you wanted to, you could buy some more episodes.
Well, so to me, I mean, if we're going to really get down into the nitty-gritty about the kind of epistemology of code and creativity, and it's the fascinating thing about code is that it's language, but through it you can architect experience. It's like being able to build buildings just by typing. So there's this funny thing that happens when you look at all that literature on open source and Stallman and all the rest, is that the fact that they're using words makes it in a way more evident to them that it's a social and shared creative act. Because they're like sharing code with each other. It's harder to hold on to the idea when it comes to when they would say information wants to be free, when Stallman said stuff like that. Well, it's hard to hold on to the idea that you own something uniquely, like a building you uniquely designed, when it's words. Just like language is shared, it has especially when you're like borrowing to do things. It's not like writing a poem. You're creating a building with words. Essentially, it's my metaphor for it, and you're borrowing from all these other people and what they've done to solve such and such a problem.
Right.
It's not the same thing as poetry. It's not like when you figure out how to handle such and such a meter, you feel a deep debt to the person who handled that in 1795.
Well, and that wouldn't even be, I mean, the analogy for poetry would be like, you found a particularly strong metaphor, and you just use it.
Uh-oh.
You found
Continue that.
like,
I'm really curious about what you're saying.
we're all shocked. Oh, God!
There's an orc down here.
And you totally just killed it. I was just saying that, the analogy would be less that somebody came up with a meter that you...
Right.
It would be that somebody came up with a metaphor that you then used.
Right.
Which, that... Sometimes that happens, certainly. Oftentimes it's viewed as a quote or a...
We're a leprechaun.
A leprechaun.
And there is gold near him.
Huh?
My purse feels lighter.
Oh, that
Did he
evil
he
leprechaun.
vanished. But at least I got the 94 gold, so
Yeah.
joke's on him.
Yeah, especially considering you haven't found anybody to use the gold on.
Yeah, still no shop, right? Diminished my strength. So there's no mechanic in here for as you level, you get to decide whether you want more strength or more hit points, like RPG
Doesn't
type
look like it.
stuff. What was that?
That was gold.
Oh,
No, it doesn't look like it. I'm trying to think.
I mean, if the potions are uniform, maybe.
Yeah.
If like the red potion is always the same thing, you have some choice there. But
Yeah, but there's not like a level. Yeah, let's see what happens.
Cloak of Darkness.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, I can't see as much.
Oh.
Oh, that's a shame.
You can't even see the walls.
Can't even
now.
see the walls, apparently. All right, hold on. All right, now it identifies it as
Yeah.
a potion of blindness.
Oh,
Well,
at
that
least
helped my
you're
strength a
blind,
little
but
bit.
you're strong. Swing
It.
and miss it.
Whatever it is.
Right.
whatever it was.
Yeah, I like that. It's just sort of like whatever, it could be another adventurer. Who knows?
I have so much gold, I want to spend it somewhere. Contribute to the economy.
It's interesting because they don't give you the orange, but you still know that it mentions the room.
Yeah.
Right. And here, I'm blind, but at least I know where I have been.
Right. Do you have any scrolls?
Nope. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
No. Here, I want to do...
Yeah, so you have to hit escape, but don't, because you'll quit.
All right. Well, there was no such potion, so I think we successfully did that. All right.
So you got... Oh, do you need to... What? Can you equip different armor?
Yeah.
Should I try something else? But do we think... Obviously, the +1 ring mail is better than the ring mail.
Yeah, that's true. What
I
about
could
the-
try the chain mail.
I don't know. Is ring mail better than chain mail?
All right. Well, let's check the...
I feel like I should know that.
Where armor is W.
I feel like ring mail doesn't come up, right? Like chainmail I recognize, ring mail I
Wait.
don't.
Oh, wheel.
That's wheel. That's not what it said in the... It's fine. It's fine. Say that. Okay. But if W is wheel... Oh, capital. Right. Capitals
Oh,
matter.
jeez.
Oh wow.
I should take it off, Starting to get pretty involved.
Screw you.
You know what? It's +1 ring mail. I think I'm... Oh, maybe the chain mail's better. You see, now I'm starting to think. Take armor off is capital T.
You blindly take your armor off.
You used to be wearing that.
Okay.
Okay, so now capital W. Try this.
I went
No.
down.
All right, so capital T, capital W,
Fell to one person.
F. Okay. Am I just going to be blind forever? Is that the story?
Well,
here?
that's why I was saying maybe you should use a scroll. See
Alright.
if.
What are the uses? Which one is use a scroll?
Okay.
Hmm.
So the difference between ring mail and chain mail. Chain mail is interlocked rings, so it's fabric
Okay.
made out of rings, where ring mail is fabric overlaid with metal rings that are not interlocked. So like the rings,
Rings
are placed
sewn
into
onto the-
actual
I see.
fabric.
Okay.
Right.
Now we know,
Mm-hmm.
I know I've
but
used
apparently
this.
it's a big debate.
What is not a big debate these days?
Maybe it was under wield a weapon, but I don't think so.
Read paper?
Oh yeah, R.
R. Okay. All right, everybody.
Why don't we do B because you have
Yeah.
3 of them? So if you
Yeah.
waste one, you have 2 more left.
vanishes. The scroll is an identify
Oh.
scroll.
Ooh, 3 scrolls of identify.
So I
We
would
could
say-
identify the scroll.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
I don't know.
Would have been useful to identify the potion before, but
Select an item to identify.
let's see.
Enchant
Okay.
weapon. All right. And now we're going to do that. We're going to do that. And D.
Food detection. Well,
We'll be able
Well.
to see the food.
we do need scroll.
Ooh. Well. Oh no, I guess I still am blind, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. It really kills the game, doesn't it?
Really not very exciting anymore.
I think, you know. Oh, hey.
Hey, gold.
It misses
Oh, it
you.
misses you.
Oh.
Great.
Whatever it was.
We've defeated 3 things now.
Yeah. Oh, there's another one.
Seems like after you get sort of over the hump into like this kind of level 4, 5, 6, with these higher hit points, it seems a little bit less dangerous.
Yeah. I think that's always kind of the case. Like,
Oh, there's a lot of.
I went into a room in one of my runs that I was testing this out on, and there was like 5 enemies in there, and it was like, oh, I'm dead. Of course, this room could have 5 enemies. You wouldn't even know.
Aha, there's a door.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's behind me the whole time.
They follow you.
They do.
We need something to make us not blind here. This is
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody.
So as we're going through other rogues and roguelike games over the next month, what are some of the qualities of this make it so lasting?
Well, to me, I had picked the roguelike theme in part because that's what I've been playing a lot. Because it's very easy to jump in and out with it, especially if you suck at it. Because then you just, you're done when you die, and you can, and it's also very addicting, because there's always the possibility of a better, essentially, roll coming up after you die in the first time. So that's, and I think this still, this definitely has that element to it as well. Maybe next time you won't go blind when you're on level 6, or
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody.
yeah, I blame
thing
you,
is,
not the
you
random potion that.
Oh.
you would never know when you hit the stairs either.
I think, I don't know. It might show you the stairs, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. The other thing is, if I want to find out if there's any branching paths, I have to like try
Right.
up everywhere.
Sheesh. I was so used to like potions and stuff. I'm used to. Oh,
Aha.
There are the stairs.
I'm
The
used to like
stairs
potions
secure-
and stuff wearing off.
I was just thinking about that. Like, is that not a thing in this game? Is this not going to wear off?
Do we
Right.
want to identify the aquamarine
Sure.
Potion. to see if it's
Maybe
a...
it'll be nice to you.
Yeah, maybe. Nope.
Against, oh, there's the sea. Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go.
Blind and paralyzed.
Yeah. Oh, did you just pick up? I think you picked up another scroll. I mean, it can't be any worse.
But you've already finished the.
Nussbach
Oh.
Fuff.
What do you want
It
to
must
call
be like a
it?
hummingbird or something.
Scroll of humming.
Flighty.
I have no idea what it is. I hope I'm not hitting this.
But
thing
that's
with it.
interesting that you could rename it.
Yes.
Do you do that with the other ones, or? I mean, the potion
Have a
named
crossbow.
itself.
Yeah, it must be that.
Great for a blind person to have a crossbow.
There must be some that just have random effects that you can name, I guess.
I'm a fighter. Well, what do we think? Do we want to keep playing blind, or are we going to start a new game?
I mean, we only have 5 minutes,
All right.
so
I assume that means I should continue. All right, I'm liking it, but somebody else should play. It's fun. You want to play? Go for it.
Well, hit F1, and I'm sure there's a way to restart.
Fast play mode is scroll. Interesting.
do we
You
want to
can
restart,
rename
or
something.
should I just?
Well, that's up to you. I mean,
I'm just looking around here.
Yeah, I am too. I've never played. I don't know what I need to play.
you can
Okay, how do
always-
I? No. How do I go back? You said don't hit escape.
Quit.
Yeah, don't say quit. Oh, you can save your game? Really? Question mark is how?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could probably quit and then start over. So, capital Q.
What was there?
You have to hit space when there's more of it.
Defeated it.
Welcome to Tales of the Blind Fighter.
I don't know what you just did.
You
but-
moved
Me
so
either.
fast.
Maybe I should not move that fast. I just thought it would make it more interesting while I was blind.
Just run.
Like, run wildly
It's
around.
behind you, I think.
Might as well.
There you go.
I've killed it.
Interesting how it's more than the lack of visual field from being blind. It's the
Yeah.
Yeah.
thing that sort of
Well,
empties the game of some
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
That's a small little thing here.
you know, it really kills the atmosphere, which, I mean, is the effect of this condition in this game.
But I feel like if you defeat a thing, you should be able, at a minimum, to reach out and be like, "This corpse feels like you have defeated."
Mhm.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but then they'd have to go like humanoid or something, because you might not know what's important.
It's like a bear trap.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh,
Huh.
So,
okay.
That
You're
must
out
be
of
the
the bear
trap.
trap.
It's behind you. Or, yeah. There you go. Weird.
yeah, that was weird.
You did pick up a potion.
I did. So
You want to drink it and see what happens? We only have 2 minutes.
I
left.
do. How do I drink?
Q. D or E.
Yes! There we go.
Just in time. What color was that?
Red.
Red. Nice. And there's the stairs.
Oh, so you go to get up the stairs. You do what do you do? It's like a carrot thing.
That's up. I've been going down, which is shift and greater than sign.
Oh man, it's so nice to see things again.
Right? So we're at like 1 minute. Do we want to say goodbye while I run around here?
Sure.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're gonna-
Oh, you just hit a centaur.
Yeah, I did.
Can you kill the centaur?
Of course I can.
Some of the centaurs
Look at
they
that.
can do-
All right, that's a
I am uber old school gamer.
okay.
So we will continue our rogue and roguelike series after this week, won't we?
Yeah, so
the
what are we
next 3
playing
weeks.
next?
I think we'll play Spelunky next.
Nice. So we actually had someone in chat get very excited when we mentioned Spelunky earlier.
Awesome.
We should tease tease it on Facebook and all the rest.
Yeah.
Great.
Aquator, what could that be?
I don't know.
It seemed to be getting a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. You're losing patience.
Ah.
Snake is chasing you.
Oh, snake!
Dead
Oh,
snake. Jeez.
You're level 8 now. Nothing can stop you.
And you can see.
And you can see. And you can see. A speed run of Rogue. I clearly understand now what was lacking in my playstyle before. Entertainment purposes.
Oh.
Oh.
Rattlesnake. All right.
All right, we got it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks,
See you next
everybody.
week.
You can play this any